They say the ocean has a memory, that every ship lost to the abyss leaves a scar on the water. But as the pressurized diving bell descended toward the morning star, the crew of the venture wasn't thinking about metaphors. They were thinking about the math. For 1,000 meters, the pressure outside the hull was over 5,000 pounds per square inch. At this depth, a human body doesn't just drown, it implodes. And yet, there it sat, the wooden brig from 1712, upright, defiant, and illuminated by a flickering lantern that physics said should be extinguished by 1 billion gallons of salt water. The captain said,
"Keep your vitals steady, Brandon. If your heart rate spikes any higher, the computer's going to trip the emergency ascent. Talk to me."
Brandon replied,
I'm looking at oak, Cap. It's not rotted. It's not petrified. I can see the grain. I can smell weight. That's impossible.
Brandon leaned his helmet against the thick acrylic port of the bell. He didn't smell ozone or recycled oxygen. Through the seals, he smelled tobacco. Sweet Virginia pipe tobacco. The plan was simple. Tether the diving bell to the Morning Star's main deck and transition into the wreck using a pressurized sleeve. But as the seal engaged, the sensors on the Venture went haywire. Lead Tech Andrew said,
Cap, the external pressure sensors just dropped to 0. Its reading is sea level. 1 atmosphere. We're 4 miles down, but the ship thinks it's sitting in a harbor in 1712.
Brandon stepped out of the bell. He expected to be crushed. He expected the freezing cold to stop his heart. Instead, his boots hit solid wood with a dry, hollow thud. He wasn't floating. He was standing. Around him, the water hadn't disappeared. It was simply elsewhere. A shimmering, translucent veil hung 10 feet above the masts, holding back the entire weight of the Atlantic. Inside this pocket, the air was thick, salty, and warm.
Cap, I've stepped out. I'm on the deck. There's no water here. I've taken my helmet off. The air, it's breathable. But it's old. It tastes like it's been sitting in a cellar for 300 years.
He panned his flashlight across the deck. Everything was pristine. The ropes were coiled. The brass swivel guns were polished. And there, standing by the mainmast, were the footprints. The footprints weren't ancient. They were pressed into a fine layer of gray dust that covered the deck like snow. They were barefoot, wide, heavy prints leading from the railing directly toward the companionway.
Brandon, be careful. The Morning Star didn't just carry cargo. Rumor was she was carrying the Tithe, a collection of artifacts stolen from a temple in the West Indies. The crew reported shifting shadows before they vanished.
Brandon ignored the warning. He followed the tracks down the narrow stairs into the officers' quarters. The silence here wasn't the silence of the deep sea. It was the silence of a house where someone is hiding in the next room, holding their breath. He reached the captain's cabin. The door was slightly ajar. On the other side, that same rhythmic knocking began again. Knock, knock, knock. Brandon, hello? Is someone there? He pushed the door open. The cabin was bathed in the warm, amber glow of the lantern they had seen from the ROV. On the desk sat a half-eaten meal, salted beef and a hard biscuit. Steam was still rising from a pewter mug of tea. The footprints led directly to the captain's chair, which was turned toward the stern windows. But the chair was empty. Brandon approached the desk. His hand trembled as he reached for the mug. It was scalding hot. The captain said,
"Brandon, get out of there now. The Venture's sonar is picking up a second signature. Something massive is rising from underneath the wreck. It's not a ship. It's moving."
Brandon didn't move. His eyes were locked on the large, silver-framed mirror hanging on the bulkhead. In the reflection, he saw the cabin. He saw the steam. He saw the lantern. But he didn't see himself. In the mirror, the person standing where Brandon stood was wearing a tattered blue naval coat. His skin was pale, stretched tight over his bones, and his eyes were nothing but hollow, black pits. The figure in the mirror wasn't looking at Brandon, it was looking at the radio on Brandon's belt. The mirror captain said,
Is the sky still blue?
Brandon backed away, tripping over a footlocker. As he hit the floor, the water ceiling above the ship groaned. A massive, dark shape, a tentacle the size of a redwood tree, slid across the shimmering veil above, blotting out the lights of the Venture. On the surface, the Venture was being tossed like a toy. The sea of glass was over. The ocean was waking up, and it was angry.
Brandon, the pressure pocket is collapsing. The Tide-Stalker is here. Get to the bell. Get to the bell.
Brandon scrambled toward the door, but it slammed shut. From the dust on the floor, hundreds of new footprints began to appear, surrounding him, circling him. The last thing the crew of the Venture heard over the radio wasn't Brandon's voice. It was the sound of 100 different voices, whispering in unison, 3 centuries apart.
Welcome home.
Brandon is trapped in the hold of a ghost ship for miles down, with something that hasn't eaten in 300 years. In the next episode, the crew discovers that the Morning Star isn't a ship at all, it's a cage.
If you felt the pressure rising in your chest during that boarding, hit the like button. We're releasing episode 3, The Log of the Damned, in 48 hours. You don't want to see what happens when the ink starts to move. Subscribe and stay above the surface.